been very involved here in legislation on treatment and recovery, and the demand side of the drug issue has to be dealt with. And I think I've talked to all three of these gentlemen about that. But we also have to deal with the supply side. And right now, we have an unprecedented amount of deadly drugs coming over our southern border. We've never seen anything like it. Several years ago, I got very involved in this issue and did some investigations here, and we figured out that China was the culprit on the deadliest of all the drugs, which is the synthetic opioid called fentanyl. And we put in place some policies. We changed the law, including the STOP Act. But it's like whack-a-mole, you know. So we stopped the U.S. Postal Service from delivering the poisons into our community. Guess what? Now it's going to Mexico. The precursors generally are being sold by China to Mexico, we're told. It's being made into fentanyl there, sometimes in pill form. There's been more fentanyl found in the last year coming over that border than in our entire history, and enough to kill every single man, woman, and child in America. Just last week, there was a couple kilos of fentanyl found in Ohio, you know, enough to kill a couple 100,000 people or more. So it's unprecedented. And we talk about the illegals who get away. In other words, where and Mr. Morgan talked about this, there's no way to really know what that number is, but we know it's significant. There are people who never are even apprehended. So I woke up to the Washington Post this morning and learned that the apprehensions in the last year are at record highs since 1986, 35 years ago. And I'm old enough to have been around in 1986, and I remember when the amnesty was talked about and people wanted to get in under the wire. Today, these numbers are just overwhelming. And with that is coming a lot of people who are never touched by the Border Patrol. And on their backs, or in their pockets, in the case of fentanyl, because you can have a very small supply that can be very deadly and very expensive, is coming in a lot of other contraband. So we don't know how many drugs are being apprehended. Mayor, you just said you have fewer apprehensions of drugs than you did previously. Actually, apprehensions are up on the border overall, almost surprisingly, because the Border Patrol has so many different things they have to attend to, they can't focus as much on the drugs as they should. They all tell me that. I was down on the border at night with them and during the day and seeing what's happening. So this is affecting our communities. And Virginia, I know you're going to talk about that. You're from Ohio, the Canton, Akron area, and you have taken your grief and you channeled it into something very constructive, including trying to convince young people that they need to stay away from all these street drugs because they're all potentially deadly now. But it's not just fentanyl. It's cocaine. It's pure crystal meth coming from Mexico. It's marijuana and other drugs all coming across the border. And again, the demand side is important to reduce the demand. I think that's the single most important thing. But the supply is also important. And think about it. With all this fentanyl streaming across the border, the cost has gone down and down and down to the point that on the streets of Akron, Ohio, the fentanyl is cheaper and cheaper. And this year, sadly, the data we have from 2020 indicates we've had the most deaths from overdoses of drugs ever in the history of our country. We were making great progress thanks to some legislation we passed around along here, and frankly, great work being done in your city and your state and elsewhere. As you know, now it's back up. And so this border issue is about illegal immigration, of course, but it's also about this contraband. And it's also about the gangs and the violence and the people who are coming in who should not be in our country, some of whom have criminal records. And Sabina, I know you're going to talk a little about that. We've got to do what's necessary to protect our country. And again, we're all border states now because we're all affected, as you said, Sheriff. And really it is about our neighborhoods and our families.